Yeah, it's your boys. Terf hashtag gang. Lil Terf. Self-loathing in this bitch. Yeah. Terf gang, Terf gang, Terf gang, Terf gang, Terf gang, Terf gang, Terf gang. Terf gang. Spend 10 on a rat girl brain. That boy love do S-strays. I fuck a bitch, I'm a lesbian. Couldn't buy my bitch, no what it rain. Till 15, still got pledge. Terf gang, Terf gang, Terf gang. Terf gang, Terf gang, Terf gang, Terf gang, Terf gang, Terf gang, Terf gang. Spend 10 on a rat girl brain. That boy love do S-strays. I fuck a bitch, I'm a lesbian. Couldn't buy my bitch, no what it rain. Till 15, still got wage. Terf gang, Terf gang, Terf gang. Womanhood not for rent. Gentrify, sissy, pretty, make them pay rent. Still swing around, no secret.
Welcome to episode 1 of the TERFCAST. I'm Karen Tumazj.
I'm FauxxXy, aka Lil Terf. You might know me as a one-hit wonder.
Terf gang.
Terf gang.
That's such a good song. You need more hits, though.
It's true.
It shouldn't die with Terf gang.
They will be coming. In fact, I'm thinking about using the podcast as a launching point for some of my new singles.
Perfect. I'm totally willing to be along for the ride on that, and to be like jettisoned off when you're famous. Like, who is Karen?
Garfunkel.
Okay, so today, what's our agenda? Agender.
So, we've got different segments on our show, and what we do is we're going to start off picking up Kathy Brennan's vaunted torch of weekly TERF news, but we're just going to call it that. It's weekly TERF news. But we have a feeling that it'll be relevant for a long time, unfortunately, because we are talking about Jonathan Yaniv, folks. Probably the most dominant story in TERF news, who just refuses to go away.
Can we say his name?
Oh, good question.
Oh, you know what though? I'm wondering, should we? We've introduced ourselves by name, but it is the current year, which means we should probably also introduce ourselves by identity.
Oh yes, indeed. Karen, what is your gender identity?
So I am white. Also, I think that's important to say.
How could you talk about gender then? That's white feminism.
I know. I am a born woman, spelled with Y's and wombs. And
Yes. I am an adult human male. I am 100% white. Yes. And I am, however, I suppose, according to pretty much all the gender identity tests and the medical establishment, I am as trans as anyone else, even though I am what you would call re-identified, which means I pretty much just do not believe you can change your sex. So I am male. And that is okay because I can still wear dresses and be pretty and be a princess. Okay, So, meh.
Princess.
Yes. Hey, no, it's invalidating.
Right. So you would be what any lay folk would probably consider a trans woman.
Yes.
Okay.
That's just too bad.
You're just too turfy to say it. Okay. All right.
Trans and cis, not real. Anyway, let's move on to the news.
All right. So let's talk about another person who probably has less claim to trans woman.
Indeed.
But insists that he is. And I think we're going to be pretty, when it comes to misgendering, I think we're going to be really fluid on that.
Yeah, I mean, I'm used to calling trans women she and her. So if you're woke out there, you're going to be on my side, not Karen's. Well, actually, she does it too. So.
No, I'm very pronoun fluid. If I,
Yes.
I mean, but it is a matter. I mean, honestly, it is a matter of like if I like you, I extend that courtesy, and if I don't, you're either he or they. Not you. You're always she. But you know, just don't fuck with me. You know.
I'll try not to poke the beast, or you'll take the kids.
Yeah. Stay in my good graces.
Yes, but Yaniv is like.
How can you call that a she?
You really can't unless you're just trying really hard, or you have some kind of like, or your brain has been woke poisoned. I have no idea how, when I was early in transition, people would call me she all the time. I have no idea. I had friends who would get mad at, like, this is when I look completely male. This is like when I'm like 3 months on hormones and I'm not presenting like anything. People, I had friends who would like call, who would like get upset on behalf of like me because a waitress heed me even though I wasn't even trying, and it was like, oh my god, what's happening? Like, this is a strange world, strange metaphysical realm we are entering here. And some people may say that's lit, but other people like us are going to say that's sexist, so that's where we're going. But let's get to the specific Yaniv story here. So what happened is that Yaniv, who I'm going to assume most of the TERFCAST people know as, like, he's most known for suing...
16 beauty salons.
16 beauty salons for not waxing his balls on the grounds that they are female genitalia and that it's transphobic to not do it, even though, it's an entirely different procedure. It's very invasive, and he said wax over and over again, like, just his level of fetishism of women's spaces and chats and stuff. And we'll get to even other trans activists calling him out on this. But anyway, his new thing is that, like, he was very happy to hear of this new ruling by district judge who said that teenage girls in high school have no right to visual privacy, and this was good to him on the grounds that trans women are women, and therefore it's bad for them to shower with boys. Or I'm gonna assume at least that's what he thought this was about, and that he didn't read the article.
Right, because I think what the judge actually said, I mean, just to be totally honest or whatever, is I think the judge actually said, if the government says so. Like, so if there's a law, like that, there's no intrinsic right, because there are some kind of, like, right to privacy, right to bodily autonomy kind of things that are like legal concepts but aren't necessarily like law or constitutionally protected in their own right. So I think that's really what the ruling was, but I am not a lawyer. But anyway, what's important is Yaniv said, yes, so exciting.
Oh my gosh. I
think he did delete that tweet, but as he should.
Wow, what a king or queen, excuse me.
Yeah. But I think the other thing obviously is that everybody knows, not everybody, but every TERF knows that Yaniv, gender critical feminist. Oh, that's another thing. Fluid on pronouns, also fluid with the word TERF. It doesn't bother me. I call people TERFs. I don't know that I should necessarily give anyone else permission to call anybody a TERF, but I don't know. I like the word. It's easier than gender critical radical feminist or whatever. It's a mouthful. TERF is nice. Thank you, trans community, for this beautiful gift of a short and concise word for all my friends.
I don't care about any slurs at all. So.
Yeah, I'm not. But anyway, TERFs will be familiar with the fact that Jonathan Yaniv has a history of fetishizing young girls' tampon strings, specifically. And that's why him being so excited about this judge ruling, which, by the way, was in the United States, I'm pretty sure, and he's in Canada.
Mm-hmm.
But yeah, I mean, so this is the thing. Yaniv, I think, is being seen as, like, crazy. I don't know. I mean, I don't know that he's crazy. I mean, I really think he's trolling TERFs.
The way I see Yaniv is actually something that I don't think a lot of people have said, which is that so when you are early in transition, and even later on past that, what happens is as soon as you, like, quote unquote, realize you're female or some crap like that, your sense of barriers between yourself as a man or a male and women dissipate, because you think that you belong in their space and you can talk about anything you want with them because you are just like they are. And so the way I see a lot of the stuff that Yana was talking about as, does he have weird things that he wants to talk about? Yes. Does he have things that nobody in their right mind, like, would think is okay to talk about, even between, you know, personal people? Even, woman to woman.
Women.
Do you think, like, and see, that's the thing. Like, that's the trans mindset, is that you don't understand what women, like, are like, and yet you think you are one. And so then we get stuff like this, where...
Well, okay. I have a question for you.
Okay.
Because I see Yaniv as actually an incredibly smart person, like, highly intelligent. And I think that he's, like, a highly intelligent sociopath, psychopath, I don't know. But his history of being manipulative but clever, it's a pretty long history. But, I know that you don't think there's any real trans people.
Correct.
But in the how earnest do you think that Yaniv is? Do you think that Yaniv really truly considers himself a woman, and has, like, even though he was, through all this tampon string things, he was not identifying as trans?
Oh, are you sure he wasn't? Because what he was talking about was like, oh, if I'm in the woman's room, then should I help with this?
You know what? Maybe he was kind of... I think what he was actually saying was that he's, like, intersex or something. That really wasn't very
right. That's
clear.
That's such bullshit. Like, I hear that all the time from trans women. Like, oh,
Yeah.
I'm intersex. No, what you mean is that you have a female brain sex. And
Right.
Yeah, I'm sure that now I'm totally understand that there are plenty of actually intersex trans people, like, for whatever that means. But it's I swear to God, it's definitely an appropriated identity.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah.
But you think that Yaniv is not, first and foremost, just somebody who is... I mean, I don't know if there's a difference between identifying as trans because you have, like, honest feelings about yourself versus, like, identifying as trans because you want something, or you want to be able to talk about something, or you want to be able to get something or be somewhere, because you you know that that's the way to get. I guess there's not really a difference.
I don't think there is a difference. You're right.
Yeah. Oh, okay. I just talked myself down.
Oh.
From that.
Well, tell me what. I actually don't know too much about what Yaniv's alleged specific predation. I mostly just know about the stuff he said in chat.
Right. So, there was that whole, you know what, I don't even necessarily want to get into all of the details because I don't want to eat up all of our time, but, Rose of the Dawn, I think is the, YouTuber name, does like a trans craziness thing, and she has a video, see, fluid pronouns, she's a trans woman, I'm calling her she. She has a video called Pillars of the Trans Community that I think is one of the best breakdowns of all of Yaniv's weirdness, and that's what kind of convinced me, like, this person is actually very smart, and when I say trolling, I don't mean like
for fun.
Yeah, I don't mean, yeah, exactly, like, they're just trolls. I mean, like, actually probably gets off on making, on sort of like a exhibitionism. Like, where he's like, look what I'm getting away with. And because he's not doing stuff in the shadows. He's showing up in his, like, weird prom dress with his dumb tiara to these, like, city council meetings, which always get filmed. And he knows that there's all these Vancouver, radical feminists watching. And gets up there and just says crazy shit. I mean, he got up and even admitted that he is the reason why Meghan Murphy's Twitter account got taken down. Just, like, right there.
Wow.
In the city council. And even went to the city council knowing that he was going to be recorded and, like, tried to propose some kind of, like, period products for young girls kind of, like, thing, like some mission that he wanted to do, and he wanted to pass out tampons and pads to young girls because he, cares about period poverty or whatever. And, I do think that the trans organizations often will like to sort of appease the TERFs, be like, let's do a few tweets about period poverty, show we care. But, like, this seems totally different. Like, he knows that he got, those WordPress blogs taken down, Meghan Murphy's account, countless other, lesser famous gender-critical feminist accounts taken down. And he knows what they were saying. He knows that everybody has those screens about the period stuff. So I feel like him going in front of that city council is very much a, like, it's like masturbating in public.
Well, let me talk about the theory that he may actually be sincere. Now, it doesn't lessen, any of the problems with him, but I will tell you, I have seen some shit in the trans community, and I didn't even think that, like, for an instant that it was, more likely that this was a person who, quote unquote, wasn't really trans, and more that this person was just somebody who just didn't understand, boundaries, decency, because I've seen this stuff all the time. Like, even, like, okay, like, I understand, I wasn't always this perfect, TERF feminist or whatever, like, I understand, like, when, you first transition and your sense of boundaries around women, like, starts to, like, get compromised. Like, I've been there, and, like, I look back on it and I'm not happy about it, but, like, I've, at least, come back from that, whereas most trans women honestly do not. Like, they just, like, whine about women's spaces forever out of validation, and not that, and they don't acknowledge that male socialization is going to persist like that way, especially. Yeah,
but I mean, like, I know a lot of men, and I feel like even if you were like, hey, listen, any question you've ever wanted to ask a girl, you know, like, and you didn't think it was appropriate, like, it's cool, you can ask me. I don't think any of them would ask about, like, or, you know, if they were like, yeah, you know, he was making it sound like he thought that, like, women were always naked in the bathrooms, and that, like,
well, to me, that
women were and I just don't think men think that. And this is not a person who's, like, intellectually disabled.
I don't want to equate autism to intellectual disability, but we do realize that, like, there are, like, you know, autistic people who don't understand, you know, the actual social mores that exist, and we're fairly sure that's the case with him, and I think he's admitted it. So I think this is definitely a possibility. It doesn't, just, you know, like, it does, and, like, also, I see, like, a lot of, you know, like, the stuff he's doing as, like, you know, activist pride rather than just necessarily trolling. You know, either theory, I think, is plausible. But, like, this doesn't, in no way, you know, excuses him. To me, it just makes him more of an example of why transness is a toxic concept, that we would let people like this, you know, behave this way and even be, you know, celebrated for it.
Yeah, exactly. So we have to bring up yet another trans woman, who's
so to speak,
if they exist. I'm just kidding. Of course, you all exist.
And they're valid.
You're valid. So valid.
Anyway.
But yeah, a very famous trans woman in TERFland is another Vancouverite named Morgan Auger, who is a politician of some sort. But I think they lost. They were, like, in 17th place for some election.
Still valid,
Morgan. And they recently came back into the spotlight. They're kind of always there, but they recently came back into the spotlight because they had worked really hard after, years of campaigning to get Vancouver to defund Vancouver Rape Relief, because they only allow female people into their rape shelter.
Oh, how dare they!
I know. Maybe because of people like Jonathan Yaniv.
They need to get all those prisoners who get raped in prison, the male prisoners. They need to go to that rape shelter too.
Yeah, exactly. What about men?
Come on.
So Morgan Auger recently wrote a post, and Morgan has been aware of Yaniv for some time, because Morgan is always fighting with TERFs. So Morgan knows that, I'm sure this information has been presented to him, and also there's some information that they had been actually talking to each other, that Jonathan had reached out to Morgan, and there was a point where Morgan was, like, defending the ball waxing thing. Like, this is a human rights situation, and, these places need to update their staff, and they need to be able to do this. And, this person is totally in the right. But anyway.
Great.
And I'm sure Kiwi Farms or other such websites have...
shout out Kiwi Farms.
Have some receipts.
It's honestly an essential website.
I know, it's terrible. I mean, the way that they speak about people is pretty awful, but thanks for documenting everything, Kiwi Farms.
No, yes.
So Morgan wrote this piece calling out Jonathan Yaniv, which makes me think that something's coming down the pipeline, that Morgan knows something about Jonathan Yaniv, because the trans community pretty much never calls out themselves.
Right. It's so rare that it happens. And of course, even like Morgan's piece here is just to the tune of, well, every community is going to have some bad elements, and to me, like, equating gender identity in this case just to race and sexual orientation just rings exactly just like not all men to me. And so it's basically just that's really the thrust of the piece, is that like Yaniv is bad, but like don't equate Yaniv with all trans women.
Right, which is fair, although I do think that it's really interesting that Morgan says that probably there's more abuse from trans women, or I don't remember exactly how he phrased it, but basically saying like, well, because people who have suffered abuse are more likely to abuse, that means that there's probably like higher than you would expect, like population wise, which is a stunning admission from a trans person, especially a politician and like a human rights advocate or whatever. Because that's what the gender critical camp has been saying forever. That like, it's not that trans people are all perverts or that they're all criminals, but they do pose a risk to women just by virtue of being male, and the fact that they're, especially abused males doesn't change that. Mm-hmm.
It's definitely, like abuse is, well, like maybe not, like specific traumatic abuse, certainly in some cases, but at least, incremental patriarchal, abuse of one's mindset, whether you're male or female, is definitely, I think, probably the key cause of transness. And that can absolutely make you, more prone to be, now I don't want to say anything is wrong with this, but some kind of deviant, which is, what Yaniv is. I support, sexual deviant. I don't support, Jonathan Yaniv wanting to, little girls' tampons, like whatever. Like, no, that's not something that he can't come to my pervert commune.
Right. Yeah. I mean, I think that people have, sexual predilections that they can't help, and it doesn't really make sense to just shun them on the basis of just having that predilection, because like, what are you going to do? It's that
I truly believe Yaniv is trying to do something like this, and I don't even care if he wants to like think this and keep it to himself.
Oh, like, yeah. What can you do? But
like, but what on earth, like, is this, that this is like, like out in the open now, and that it's being associated with like trans rights? It's like, oh my God.
Yeah, it's really bizarre. And then also, I mean, while I do have sympathy for all of the trans women who really do just want to like get on with their day, there's just undeniably trans women who do fetishize being in women's spaces specifically. And, it's okay to fetishize things, but I'm no fan of the kink community, but I'm pretty sure one of the ground rules is that everybody has to consent to the kinks that you play out.
Right.
And so this really, by allowing these men into women's spaces, and then legally threatening women who don't want that, you're like forcing them to consent to their own sexual harassment. Mm-hmm. Like institutionally. This is like an institutionally sexist idea that is like being flown under the flag of trans rights.
Mm-hmm. It's truly a men's rights movement. Like, I don't want to get too conspiratorial with it, because the way I see the whole thing is it's kind of like an autonomous pyramid scheme, where the ideology, the spread of the ideology validates the person who spreads it, and that could just be somebody low level, but like I don't think there's any spearheads of the trans community that are talking about the trans ideology. I mean, maybe there's some kind of I don't know if there's any kind of psyop at work. I don't know.
No.
I don't really know if
Yeah.
because the CIA, etc., don't typically meddle in the affairs of patriarchy as much as they do in the affairs of white supremacy and capitalism and stuff. And so that's not something that I would really think this is, but the way I do think it operates is that trans ideology spreads because it benefits the delusion of everyone in the community, even though it doesn't actually benefit. It's just they think it does, etc., and then it's ultimately just based in misogyny, blah 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 blah.
Yeah. Well, I mean, I do know that the CIA had some particular interest in postmodernism, which is the kind of undercurrent that academically is sort of necessary to push these ideas. Like, it's the only container that can hold the idea that men can be women.
Yeah, well, I don't think that the problem is postmodernism so much as it is the misapplication, because people are trying to make sex postmodern, which is like trying to make, I don't know,
Right.
carbon postmodern, because it can be broken down at like an atomic level, or I don't know, some people have bigger penises than others, and it's like, and so that's ridiculous. It's like the idea that some people are just gonna have a flat nothing of genitalia. It's a spectrum from whole to dong. It's like...
Right, exactly. No, I know. I mean, I don't mean like all of postmodernism. I'm not talking about like literary criticism and stuff, but like, yeah, it certainly is. There is this academic, I guess it's become an academic tradition, but that is rooted in this postmodern thinking, which is beautiful for, like, you can really elegantly validate ideas that you already have, but it doesn't stand up to any, like, you can't prove anything, you can't disprove anything. It's not very helpful. And also, you can make all of these claims, and you can make all about what is happening, how people are oppressed, and you can make all of these claims about what needs to be done in order to alleviate that oppression. But what I never hear is like, and here's how we're going to measure to see if that works. You just never hear that part.
Right.
It's just like, of course, if we do this, then we'll have our utopia.
Yeah, it's like the way I see it right now is like social justice ideology thinks it's got it all figured out, which is like, imagine like in the 60s and somebody was like how we gotta call them Negroes forever. It's like that's just how I see it. Like, it's ridiculous. Like, terminology will change. It doesn't mean like a more abstract idea of trans identity, which is mostly just gender nonconformity, won't still be here, and of course it should be, because gender isn't real. That's why we support gender abolition in the TERF community.
Right. Well,
anyway, Jonathan Yaniv is we'll keep an eye on him, and it's very it really truly is something that Morgan Auger would step up. He's like just these figures of the trans community, like which Jonathan Yaniv is probably the most like well-known trans pervert right now.
Outside of Karen White, yeah.
Yeah, well, it's Karen White isn't gonna do anything else,
right?
Whereas Jonathan Yaniv is just starting. So
it's like we're just really waiting to see what happens, and it's either, I don't know. I mean, I feel like it's probably gonna end up being like a "we told you so," but I guess we'll wait and see. And I don't like that because it's like, I would rather no one get abused at all. Yeah, it's like, I'd rather be wrong.
Women like blah blah blah, like warning you, and it's like, just like, well, why didn't you listen to the women? Oh, gee, I don't know. We're not programmed to do that in society.
Oh yeah. Well, I mean, even in Auger's piece, he says something like, I would have said something sooner, or like we could have called this out sooner if it weren't for the TERFs, using it for their own, goals of their terrible bigotry.
That whole thread about how, like, this is Megan Murphy's fault. Yeah. Like, what the fuck are you talking about? Like, are you kidding me?
Yeah.
Like, what's Megan Murphy's fault? You wouldn't even be having to talk about this if not for, her.
Yeah, exactly. All right, so
let's move along to our other news stories down the docket. Chiefly is Charlize Theron announces officially that she is raising her child as a girl, her AMAB child as a girl, which, for a long time I was like, TERF should leave trans kids alone, but the way that I, understand it now is just like, why can't we just have, why can't we encourage, just gender nonconformity? I swear to God, because it's not real anyway. And the main point of this story is that her kid said, like, I'm not a boy at 3 years old, which, I mean, it really proves something to me about the way the trans community thinks. Like, you think I would know, like, so much about this, but I feel like I'm growing more and more divorced from it, which is this just insidious notion of an inherent gender identity, like, as if, that you're born with, a certain set of stereotypes that you want. They say stuff like, femininity is oppressed, blah, blah, blah. Now, I believe in the concept of gender identity as something that you learn. I think it's a lot more fluid than the idea of, my gender identity is that I want to do all these certain masculine things. No, like, non-binary people or non-binary ideology is actually correct in that it's when it says, like, there are infinite genders, in that, there are infinite experiences.
Because it's just your personality, and your personality as formed by your, your interests
place in
and
the gender hierarchy.
Yeah, and it's got all these different loops and feedback loops that are like, it just doesn't really make sense to even have, like, strict categories of gender. If it's just like, we're all people. Some of us are female people. It's a patriarchal
notion.
Yeah, some of us are male people. I know that trans kids, to the extent that transness is real or whatever, I know that they've existed for a long time. I do know that more adopted children, like, disproportionately, will identify as trans. I think that's something that should probably be looked into. But I feel like I don't really have a problem with parents even calling their kid a new name. I just think that if you're telling a little kid, oh yes, you, like a little boy, yes, you can be a girl. You can be a girl who grows up to be a woman, and, I just feel like you're setting them up for you're promising them something that you really can't deliver.
Mm-hmm.
And that's going to confuse them.
Well, the way I see it is that we shouldn't, just, have just gender at all. We shouldn't teach kids gender because it's abusive.
Yeah.
We shouldn't teach them, current gender ideology, and we shouldn't teach them transgender ideology.
Right.
Because it's going to be abusive either way. Like, the only difference is that trans ideology, will, I don't want to go into what the dangers of hormone blockers or whatever, but it's a pretty established thing that HRT will make you sterile, which
right.
is if you can avoid these things, which we can because this system is ideological. It is
right.
not medical.
Yeah.
No, I think transmedicalism is a ridiculous proposition. Transmedicalism makes sense in the idea of depression is medical, but this is a much more social issue. Like, a lot of people will recognize that depression is socially conditioned. Of course, it is also much more genetic than transness, I think.
Yeah.
But transness, we can cut this off at the root. We don't have to create this new mental illness,
right?
Because the reason it exists is because we have this insane idea of sex stereotypes, and we're just pushing them more and more. So no more of this. No more celebrity glory of these things. It's just it becomes more and more glamorous. Like, the more and more celebrities do this, and I swear to God, and it's so easy to trans a child too. It's so easy. If you want to see transness in your child, you will. Mm-hmm. If you want to see transness in yourself, you will.
Mm-hmm. Exactly.
It's not okay. We need to end this.
For sure. I will say about the transmed position, what it is good for, the only thing that it's good for is that it can be a social compromise. We can say, okay, we will let trans identified people, have certain spaces that they can share with the sex that they identify with, but it has to be limited. It can't just be any old person on any day can just identify like that. So it is kind of it's like a social compromise, but it's definitely not moving anything forward.
Yeah, I don't even agree with that. I just don't think that's the way it should be anyway. I think it's actually probably more conservative than uwooism, which at least understands that gender stereotypes are a problem. It just doesn't know what gender is at all. Mm-hmm. It's still misogynist, but I think it's actually less misogynist than transmedicalism. Michigan woman's lawsuit against Planet Fitness will move forward. This was that famous case that Steven Crowder made fun of by dressing up as best, or not really as best he could, but as a really low rent looking trans woman, which I'm sure would pass for fine now.
Right.
I don't understand how this didn't succeed even at the time. But this case where the woman was shocked by a non-passing trans woman in the Planet Fitness locker room for women, and but then she was kicked out because the policy was unwritten, and it became a big hooray for Planet Fitness, this woke company.
But then she could sue on the basis of false advertisement or breach of contract.
Yes, that's what she's doing.
Okay.
And
it's moving forward.
Hooray.
Hooray, I guess. I mean, I don't know, it's such a strange thing to be like, oh, thank goodness there are still some conservative judges. It's so bad.
Trans military ban begins to go into effect.
I don't know anything about that, actually.
Well,
details.
that's just, I think it's just because Trump is the commander in chief, so he can do most of the things with the army that he wants. And so he was just able to go, I don't want trans people in the military anymore, which is very funny at the time because he used really woke language to describe trans people.
Well, I mean, I do think that there is some amount of like, I know that the trans community obviously sees it as just like, oh, the right wingers want to put us all in ovens. But there are some, first off, let's be real, yourself included. Are there any not mental trans people? Not really.
Are there any like trans people who aren't like mentally like unwell? You mean?
I mean, not mentally unwell per se. I mean, there's certainly lots of trans people who get on, but are there any normie trans people? No,
not really. I mean, there's a few, but like I would call them probably more boring than normie.
Yeah, I mean, so it just the propensity for mental illness is very high in the community, and maybe some of that mental illness is because of being trans. Maybe some of the being trans is because of the mental illness. Either way you look at it, there's a lot of mental illness. And trans people are fucking expensive. Like, in terms of providing, in terms of providing all those different surgeries, treatments, etc.
The way that I see that is that I think, I do believe in like total like, transhumanist bodily autonomy, even at the expense of the state. But I don't want that to be, something that is encouraged because of, patriarchy. I think, we need to, if we're doing that, then we need to abolish gender at the same time so that there's no, like encouragement of, I don't know, gender validation to go along with those things, because that's very dangerous.
Sure, but at the same time, there is only so much money, and I do think that actual diseases and solving like things that really will actually kill you, not because you're going to kill yourself if you don't get what you want, but like, diabetes is going to kill you whether you want it or not. Those types of things, they need to be solved first. But I mean, back to the military.
Well, yeah, ideally these surgeries would be really lessened under gender abolition. It would just be like, the odd freak who, like, I'm a male, but I want breasts too. And I'm like, okay, well, that's fine. It doesn't have anything to do with, like, gender. And, like, we just wouldn't have, like, it just wouldn't be a big thing.
Sure. But the last thing about why the military, I've just been thinking about this lately, why they might want to ban trans people. And I don't even think this is a good enough reason to ban trans people, but they might do it because SJW ideology is in the military. If that were to spread, it could be a national security threat.
Well, that sounds lit to me, to be honest.
Well, I mean, if you're not crazy about a civil war, I am. See, I'm not.
I would much prefer think about the way the military is now. The military is definitely, if we had a revolution today, the military would side with Donald Trump over any sort of socialist force overcoming him. So I would honestly, even if it's transness or whatever, I would support a much more like, I don't know, tanky military.
See, I think I was definitely maybe in that mindset a year or so ago, very accelerationist, but I just don't see a revolution as being very healthy for society or for women especially. I just think it's something that's bad for women. And I think that the SJWs, I don't think that it's true that the military would automatically side with the Trump supporters because the liberal cities have all the money.
Well, the reason why, a big reason why that I've heard that the states that surprisingly went for Trump did is because their communities were devastated by the wars, and they saw Hillary Clinton as more warlike because all their young men had to go off to war because that was their only option. And then, they were being killed, they were, being wounded, and they just were sick of that. And that was, one thing for that. So again, these are, more complicated issues. It's not like, just like, oh, middle America, right wing.
No.
If you like the troops, right wing. But like, still like, I think the idea of an SJW military is at least funny.
Yeah, well, there's some comedy there, sure. Okay, moving on to other
the last news topic that we have here, unless you had anything else.
No, I don't.
Is trans author Juno Dawson. A lot of gay men are gay men as consolation prize because they couldn't be women. The primacy of sexual orientation over gender identity. I think these things are both constructed.
I think it's actually, it's amazingly, it's really the same. I think biologically it's almost the exact same mechanism as gender and sexuality. And the trans movement really wants to separate it and pretend that it's, some totally different thing. But when we look at those brain scans and the things that do sort of uphold the narrative that there's some kind of brain sex thing, it is in homosexual people only.
Right.
That are matching that. And I mean, I can really explain as much as I know about the biological components and the social components of each thing, or really of gender and sexuality, but it could probably be its own episode. It would probably take a while, but I do know what you're saying.
Lesbianism is a very important social category that we need to preserve for political reasons. That's why I love political lesbianism.
Right.
Not because, and like, people are confused. Political lesbianism, but is it sexuality real? No, not necessarily, because, it's very important that we exclude men from certain spaces. Very important. I support that wholeheartedly, for any reason. So,
definitely.
Yeah. Dumb online shit. This is going to be a great segment. People are going to love this one. This is where we just talk about dumb online shit that we saw this week. Yay!
Yay! I might actually... Okay, well, first off, I think everybody knows that MRKH Take Two, also known as Emily Graham, was banned from Twitter. She's an intersex activist.
This is the big one.
Yeah, she speaks out against, gender bullshit.
Yeah, she's like almost as big as Megan Murphy, as much as I can tell.
Yeah, and the tweet that got her removed just said, let me get it, I have it right here. If it's not a mental health condition, explain to me the self-harm and suicide stats you peddle. Tell me why we're medicalizing children if they are not unwell. Explain that all to me because I do not understand.
So hate speech. So
I know. It's nasty.
Oh my gosh. And just
what a bigot.
In the mainstream, when people talk about, on, stuff on Twitter, now, women's issues have never been in the mainstream. This is, an extension of that. Like every TERF that gets banned for saying pretty much nothing. This is like a covert thing. Mm-hmm. Like, it really is very disturbing. And they're taking out like the big leaders of the movement here with like Megan Murphy. You think like the average, Joe on the street knows who Megan Murphy is? No, they think like one of the big like feminists today is like Emma Watson or something.
Right.
It's like,
exactly. Okay, so the next item that you have on the list is Stephen Gruby Enby. What?
Oh
does
boy,
that mean?
I can't wait to talk about this. Okay, now I do not know when this happened. I only just found out about it the other day, so this could be hella old news. Old news. Stephen Gruby is the CEO, I believe, of Gruby, which is is the biggest trans porn company in the world, I guess. It's the biggest one that I know of. And, like, I've only just found this out. He has started going as he, they, and in his bio says, please use the correct pronouns. So now we have the CEO of the biggest trans porn company being woke. Oh my god, that is the most liberal feminist thing I've ever heard.
So, I mean, wait, if they're already trans... Oh, is this a biological male?
This is yes, absolutely.
Okay, but I mean, wouldn't we expect that?
He's well, at this point we would.
Okay.
Like there's like this moment, well, it wasn't a moment, it was like up until, well, I guess there was a moment when it changed, when, like trans porn and that whole community wasn't woke. The trans porn awards were called the Trannies. Yeah, that's cute, but then they had to change it to the Transgender Erotica Awards. And, we have...
Now they're trying to make themselves... They're trying to clean up the image.
It's liberal feminism now, even though, this is, sexuality, especially, kink sexuality, revolves around the disgusting. Like, whatever happened to, Divine talking about filth all the time?
Yeah.
Like, come on. Like, I'm just so, like, I can just imagine, like... I just had this image in my head of, just like a new male who, is a chaser, and he's like, oh boy, I'm jacking off to trans porn, and I'm so woke for doing it too.
Right.
And he's just like, his dick is so clean, it's going, just squeaking away because of how clean and wholesome that this, masturbation session is. Just driving me nuts. This is the culture.
This is, yeah, it's craziness too. I have the mother-in-law story.
Oh yes. You better talk about this one.
Okay, so a woman came on to the gender critical Reddit and said that they had been had their post deleted, and they had trouble with some other Reddits because they were really they were trying to tell their story, and they were really working hard to not be transphobic, but all the different rules made it really difficult to actually speak her truth. She did actually, well, anyway, I'll just tell the story. So her mother-in-law, her actual mother-in-law died a few years ago, and then her father-in-law took the mother-in-law's name and as her new trans identity.
This is truly disgusting right there.
Yeah, which is weird. And this new mother-in-law, in quotation marks, was really trying to get her to break down her boundaries and go into changing rooms with her, and
just what I was talking about before.
Exactly, same thing. And 3 weeks after she had her new baby, this mother-in-law threw her a dildo party, which is just so fucking inappropriate for, even if it was an actual mother-in-law. Even if that were, it was a female, it would still just be bizarre and weird. And even if it wasn't 3 weeks after she had just given birth, it would be bizarre and weird. But you put it all together, and it's just bizarre and weird in so many degrees. It's just... It's craziness, yeah. And
part two, of course.
So then, so she posts on the Reddit, and of course all the gender critical feminists, you know, they like can't help themselves. They're like, it's he. Stop saying she. You know, they're like, but whatever. But a lot of people were really nice and gave her a lot of advice. But she was overwhelmed by it, and she ended up kind of going like, oh, you know, you're all hateful and I don't like you or whatever. But we did end up getting an update because somebody was, you know, watching the other Reddits, and the mother-in-law, like, this was just like the next day or something. Like, she had locked the house, but somehow the mother-in-law got in, and he grabbed her sleeping baby while she was in the shower, and then came into the bathroom to start arguing with her, and like threw back the curtain. And he's always been trying to get to see her naked. Like, yay, he wins. And is holding this baby, like, I mean, it's essentially a kidnapping charge at this point. I don't know how far you have to take a baby for it to be kidnapping, but so she grabs her baby, and she tries to get away from this mother-in-law, who then shoves her with the baby in her arms.
Up against the wall. And so I think that was kind of where it was at. And the husband, to his goddamn credit, the whole time, was just like, no, this is not okay. None of this is okay. And she was the one who was like, I just want to be a peacekeeper. You know, just total female socialization. Right.
And like, I don't want anyone to hate me or not like me, which, you know, makes sense as to why she didn't want anything to do with the TERFs. Because that puts a little bit of a stink on you, I gotta say. People don't like that. And she needs to be liked so badly. But, I mean, even when she posted it, I don't know where she posted it the second time, but people, you know, just some normie Reddit, but people were like, holy shit, call the cops. Like, why aren't you just call the cops? Go to the cops.
Yeah, she did call the cops then.
And I think she did, yeah, so.
But they, apparently, I don't think they could charge anybody because there was no evidence of physical harm, but the mother-in-law is being evicted from the guest house on the property.
Good.
Yes. See, the way that I see this story is you know, people talk about, you know, not people, but actually me, I don't really think there's that many kinds of trans women. I think it's essential that we group them all together like men, like we do with men, because male socialization. However, there truly are different varieties, not just the Blanchardian divide, which is real. It's not perfect, but it's real. But this old trans women, you know, what are they called? Huns, Susans, who, you know, come out super late, Marlas, and who have, you know, years and years, Caitlins of decades of male socialization, decades of male privilege built up, not just, you know, like 2 decades, not just a childhood, not just a boyhood, which is, you know, which is super important. But like even more and more and more. Yes, really. Yeah, absolutely. And the way that this then functions is that these people can be insane. They can be, you know, criminals. Like, they're so often are criminals, like, because, like, their mindset has become totally warped by this new, you know, gender ideology.
This desire.
Yeah, and, like, even,
because they've had this predilection, probably, towards seeing themselves as women in, like, sexual fantasy for a long time.
Right.
And, like, they've suddenly discovered that there's, you know, all they have to do is, like, walk to a courthouse and pay $15, and now they're
and that's all this mother-in-law did. There's no other transition other than name change. I don't even know if there's pronoun change, no dress different, no presentation change, nothing.
No hormone treatment, no surgery. Yeah, and it's maddening that we're just kind of opening the door for, like, more of these incidents.
The next thing I have on the list, this is Sonic Fox 5000 playing the new Mortal Kombat game, and gleefully using a male character too, doing a fatality move on, I think, Sonya Blade, who is voiced by Ronda Rousey, who is a noted TERF, and do it as he does the fatality move. He says, TERF on her, like it's like, this is what I do to TERFs. I attack them brutally with my male digital body, and it's like, oh wow, it's so epic. Like it's one of the most gross things I've ever heard.
TERF. Come here, you little TERF.
Wow.
I also like
That's so
laughing
disgusting.
at my own jokes.
Sociopathic right there. Like, come on. Let's move along.
And that got a lot of likes too, didn't it?
I bet anything where violence against women, it's not, if it's in the name of wokeness is things like, even if you say like, I would like to rape Hillary Clinton, like, oh, like, how epic, like, why isn't there more of that? Like, come on. Not like I'm saying there should be more of that. I'm saying that, like, it doesn't, like, that's the equivalent basically of this, or like, I'd like to rape Marine Le Pen or something, and like that wouldn't get anywhere here. But if we're having plenty of people say, I want to rape TERFs, I want suck my girl dick.
Right.
So again, like, it's just it is what it is. Next, I have this comment from @trans, which is the worst name of, well, it's not the worst name I've ever heard, but I just really hate trans aesthetic. It's this 5-panel comic about this wolf who puts on sheep's clothing, and he says, "Today is the day. I be who I truly am. Oh no, I can feel everyone's eyes on me. Maybe I can't really be me." And then he's gendered sheep by a waiter who I guess is like a cat, who looks like the cat from Azumanga Daioh. And he says, "Or maybe I can be who I am." And it's like, did you really not think this through?
Yeah, I don't. It's strange to me how unknowledgeable they are of like what idioms mean or what history means. Like I've seen trans people say shit like in favor of the Salem witch trials. Like that we used to burn witches, kind of a thing. And it's like, the whole point, like the whole historical lesson that you're supposed to take from that is that witches aren't real. And so there was all these people being burned for no good reason.
Oh, by the way, this is from @Cats Cafe Comics, or Matt Tarpley, not the account that I found it on.
Oh, okay. So, but yeah, I don't get it. Like, it's a wolf in sheep's clothing, which is...
Everyone knows what that,
what
that idiom means.
That's so strange. Oh, hey, speaking of which, I want to talk about some historical TERFery, or no, I'm sorry, historical transness.
Right,
we talk about, or like the TRAs, the trans community, often talks about historical trans people. Sometimes, or very often, they try to erase women from history and say, like, Joan of Arc, actually a man, because a woman wouldn't have done that.
My favorite instance of this is it happens not just in history, but in fiction. Probably the first thing that ever made me go crazy was I saw a think piece that tried to make Samus Aran trans, and I'm like, oh, so you mean one of the only like female video game icons? Like go fuck yourself, for real. Like,
well, I mean, I don't, that's not my culture. But,
I know,
okay,
like, mine either, but like, geez.
So one that I'm sure the trans community is not in a very big hurry to identify with. So there's an old Scottish legend, which is about the mother of Saint Mungo. So his mother is Saint Tenu. I'm probably messing this up. Scottish people can comment and tell me how I did. But Saint Tenu has been described as Scotland's first recorded rape victim, battered woman, and unmarried mother. Her son was conceived when the Welsh prince Owen Mab Uren raped her. Owen was disguised as a woman, and after sexually assaulting the naive princess, he confused her by saying, "Weep not, my sister, for I have not known thee as a man is used to know a virgin. Am I not a woman like thyself?" This is from Wikipedia.
So epic. What a valid girl.
So, there's some historical precedent for why women might be concerned about men pretending to be women coming into their spaces.
Nah. Pretty much. And then we got one last thing in dumb online shit. There's this tweet from, I don't know because it's crossed out. Actually, I'm not going to read it. Or anyway, the tweet is, so it's a quote tweet of having gender dysphoria is just like having cancer.
Eye roll.
And eye roll. And then the response is, I would prefer to be a cis girl with cancer at the same lethality rate as gender dysphoria than a trans girl with gender dysphoria, for the record, or for your information. Which I don't even know what to say to that. Like,
okay. Yeah, no, I mean, I do think that all territory, like, they have, it's not just boundaries with women. They have no boundaries with anybody. They have
true.
They'll take, like, race, intersex conditions, cancer victims, whatever it takes to, like, say, give me attention, give me all of your, sympathy and all of your resources. For I am the winner of the Oppression Olympics.
My friend Ariel has a classic tweet that I think about all the time, which is something along the lines of coping with my loss of privilege by declaring myself supreme overlord of the oppressed.
Yes.
Yeah.
Exactly.
And, that's transness is the trans movement is just it's covert male appropriation of every single oppression. That's what it is. Do not underestimate the male ego.
And I think that people must be aware that so-called TERFs, even though they get put into the same category as Nazis, so it's okay to punch them, I think that they know that they are not Nazis because white supremacists and alt-right people, they can get interviews with the left. There's people on the left who want to, because it's so absurd and it's so crazy to leftist sensibilities that anybody would think this stuff. They want to know, but they're not doing that with TERFs.
Right.
They're not going like, well, we'll just set up the camera and let this TERF, just screw themselves as they talk through it. They must have, I don't know. They must know that they're smarter than that or something, because they don't extend that. They don't say like, well, let's know our enemy. What are these TERFs all about?
Right. That's a good point.
So they must know.
Yeah. Let's. All right. It's time for Theory Sphere with Karen. This is Karen's segment for the most part, because Karen is honestly more of a feminist academic than my male ass. I took 2 feminism classes.
Well, I took 0. So, I don't know, maybe you can...
Well, you read more than I do.
That's true. But, I mean, it does actually have to do with female spaces, and specifically what I think is really interesting about radical feminism writing, which is the idea of having female written literature and academic papers that are then built up upon by other female academics and writers to sort of balance a very, very long history of male writing. And I think I'll start with just some very, very obvious points that shouldn't need too much explaining. Obviously, like the narratives that we read, the writing, the screenplays and the books and everything shape our world, shape the way we see the world, shape the way we relate to each other, and the way that we can imagine being other people and having empathy. And for most of history, obviously most of that writing came from men, and that the writing that you read shapes the writing that you write. Naturally, like you're not starting from scratch. You're not inventing writing every time you write. There's all kinds of cultural ideas and narratives that you're going to be working with, which have been obviously male-dominated for a long time. So there was this brief period in the 60s and 70s where radical feminism really had a lot of energy in it, and women recognized this deficit of women writing, and they formed these women's studies. That's another thing. We talk about all of these like rape shelters and other things that women have, these women's spaces. They were built by women, including women's studies departments in colleges. Women had to fight for that. They had to make up the curriculums. They had to get it started. Nobody was like, here, women, I'll give you some money to do it. They had to like really rally and ask for or demand these things. And of course, in like the 80s and 90s, the women's studies departments became gender studies. And then started leaning in this SJW direction. But before that, it was really about women writing, women reading women's writing new things. And they were like pounding out papers. There's actually archives at some universities that are just filled with these lost women's writings. And I hope someday to go to Melbourne, Australia, and see Sheila Jeffrey's archive and Germaine Greer's archive. I think that would be amazing. I'll put my GoFundMe in. No, I'm just kidding. Come on, send me to Melbourne. But I think that because we've had male thought only, maybe not solely, but for the most part only for a really long time, we're kind of missing out on this perspective. That is something that I do agree with social justice warriors on, is that people who have a certain lived experience will have a different perspective. I think that's pretty fucking obvious, actually. I don't think that means that they're the only people who can talk about something, but I do think that it can be a way that we can sort of see where the source of new ideas might come from, and say, like, there's a really good, like, this is a really fertile area for good ideas. Yeah, go ahead.
I learned about this concept. I don't remember who came up with it. But it was called strong objectivity, which is also known as standpoint theory. It's when you learn that there is no, objectivity, at least not that can be perceived within human experience. But there was this theory in feminism called strong objectivity, which is that you take the experiences of the most downtrodden and you create, an objectivity based around that, because, the typical objectivity is that of the dominant group. And if we, want justice, then we have to move objectivity towards the subjectivity of the oppressed. Now, the problem with that is when you have a group that isn't oppressed, but, invents itself as an oppressed group. Yes.
Right.
And then I think this might actually be, this is something that is, even if it's not, like specifically theoretically understood in, the modern culture. It's implicitly understood that oppression gives you clout.
Mm-hmm.
And if you're, male, like, that can be attractive. This is not something that you think consciously in your head as you're transitioning. I understand that. However, we cannot pretend that it is not a factor.
Oh, definitely. And I actually think that there is a second problem with it. Like, even if men weren't doing that, I think that there is a second problem with this idea, which is that we know that people who have suffered trauma can have a difficult time processing the situation that they're in. We talk about, like, Stockholm Syndrome. There's other related kind of traumatic conditions that people can be in. So to say that it has to be the most marginalized community only coming up with the narrative in observing themselves, I think is a mistake. I think we should listen to those narratives. I think they should be brought into the into the fold, but I think that a lot of SJWs think that you should only listen to that. And so you end up in this situation where something is offensive or a problem only because one person is really upset about it. And it doesn't matter if that's ridiculous and 99% of the other marginalized people aren't upset about it, because the only reason they're not upset about it is because they have some kind of internalized hatred or whatever. Like, it's really unwieldy. I do understand the drive towards it, but I think everybody kind of recognizes that they've been in situations in their life where they, at that time, were not in the right mindset to really know what was even going on with themselves at that time. And that it was only, like, in retrospect, after being out of that situation, that they could really start to come to understand what had actually happened to them. So to say, like, well, only women who are currently in sex work or prostitution, we should only listen to what they have to say, I think is a huge mistake. So
anyway, back to the
theory sphere. This isn't even really theory. This is just, like, me kind of talking about why I like radical feminism, why I like the idea of female-only works.
It's relevant to academia.
Yeah, it is relative to academia, although I'm not an academic. I have a bachelor's degree in computer engineering. I've never taken a gender studies or women's studies class ever. I've taken, like, one anthropology class and, like a world history class. Like, that's, my humanities are not. Yeah. I get them on my own. So yeah, I guess there's some related thoughts, obviously, between radical feminism and second wave feminism and third wave feminism, but third wave feminism kind of took these women's studies and they went like, we want to use the ideas of, like, Freud and Foucault and build on that, which is like, well, that's dumb. You're just continuing men's studies then, really. You're like, men's studies with, like, some female perspective. To me, it's dumb, but, they came up with...
I mean, I love Freud, but, like, I understand that it's probably not where we want to start with women's studies.
Right. And, I mean, there was, like, women were writing critique of men's writing. That was, like, the starting point to say, like, well, look at, this is where we think these men went wrong. There was plenty of that.
I love Luce Irigaray.
The third wave feminists went off into like agreeing with this stuff and being kind of uncritical. And then it was this postmodern bent too. So we got our Judy Butlers, which, I mean, people tell me there's really interesting things in Judith Butler's writing. I have, like, identity-wise, I have, like, everything working against me from understanding Judith Butler's work. I'm lower middle class, Midwestern, an engineering major. Like, my brain just cannot, like, I get angry when I read Judith Butler. I'm like, just fucking say what you mean, lady. What is this garbage? This is so just, like, elitist bullshit that you can't make your writing clear for, you know, average people to understand. I'm just like, I'm so team dumb. I do not like elitist academia. And I have to say, radical feminism, I'm sure there's some texts out there that are confusing, but in general, they have just such a commitment to writing in a way that the average woman could understand. It's just really, it makes my heart feel super happy.
I have a question.
Okay.
Who is the originator of the concept that gender is a social construct? Because I learned that at the same time that we were learning about Judith Butler and feminist philosophy.
Well, I don't think there's any one person who is responsible for that, but feminists weren't, even though feminists were really writing about gender, you know, they were talking about sex roles for like a really long time, they didn't call it gender. That came about sometime in the 70s or 80s, and it was really specific to like certain authors, and I don't know the full history of it, but they didn't have that, you know, like, even though feminists have been talking about that subject, it didn't have that name. And I do think that it did, like, come about more in that Judith Butler stuff. But yeah, I mean, like, gender is a social construct, very good, sure. Sex is a social construct. Now we're in weird territory.
Not quite
there. And, you know, the last thing that I really want to say, we can wrap this up, about these, you know, women working on women's studies and just how that kind of differs from the SJW idea, is that, you know, there's not, like, a desire to necessarily, like, take that into all fields. And even though there is there's some room there for finding, like, different kinds of knowledge, and I have read some radical feminist works that were really kind of spiritual, and I did think they were super interesting. There's nothing really, like, it's not inherently anti-enlightenment in the same way that the you know, left-wing identitarianism or SJWism is. So I don't want to scare people away from it who, you know, are afraid of female supremacy or whatever. And it is, you know, it is really important that this tradition or whatever be allowed to be women only, but I do think that should also be space for adjacent radical feminist fields that do have male writers. I think that, like, Robert Jensen, who wrote End of Patriarchy, Radical Feminism for Men, is a fantastic writer and really makes radical feminist ideas super accessible. So I actually do like men.
Yeah. The way I see radical feminism is that a lot of feminists will not want to focus on this, but I think they probably would believe it, is that patriarchy hurts men too. The way that feminists like to talk about stuff is that feminism is for women, which is absolutely true, but I feminism absolutely, I think, is helpful for men and males as well. I think gender abolition, I think, is a much healthier concept for trans people than trans ideology, than gender ideology. And so that's really why I'm radical feminist ally, like, these other men.
Right. And I think that if I can speak to the curative effects of radical feminism, for me personally, like, I'm just really trying to sell radical feminism here. Take it or leave it. But I had pretty not terrible body issues. There were certainly times in my life where I had body issues, and I really just could never see myself. Like, I couldn't look in the mirror and say, like, I look good. It was always like, well, I'm pretty, but there's this problem or that problem. There was always something to pick at, to be disappointed about, to focus on. And, I mean, there was no specific text, but just like a month of reading radical feminist literature when I just kind of first discovered it and first really jumped into it. That was like over a year ago at this point. I have never felt more at ease with my appearance, with my body. I have just I look in the mirror and I think, like, okay, like, that's who I am. And it's not, oh, okay, this is okay. It's like, oh yeah, I'm really beautiful in the way that, like, you see these black and white photos of, like, really old people, but you're like, oh, look how beautiful humans are. Like, I see myself in that way. It's not a sexualized beauty. It's not a, like, oh, I'm not meeting the male gaze. And I realize that that's how I was feeling in the past. And that's just my personal story. I have heard from a lot of trans people, I know maybe not a lot, but certainly more than 3 or 4, that reading radical feminism caused them to stop feeling quite so dysphoric. Like, they, being misgendered didn't have the same energy that it used to.
Yes, absolutely.
Yeah.
Definitely true of me.
Yeah. So I think that there is a lot of healing, I guess. Like, I don't want to be too hippy-dippy, but there is a lot of good, like, lady knowledge that a lot of people, I think, need. And it's very disappointing that it's so suppressed.
Yeah, but it's not surprising.
No, it's not surprising. Of course it's not. And I think that was, like, a big realization for me, too. Like, oh, of course the good shit isn't really just on Amazon in the, like, top 500. Of course you have to, be let into the secret club. But, I mean, it's not. All this shit, if people are interested, radical feminist books from the second wave and a lot of recent ones, you can find PDFs, you can find, entire texts for free. Radical feminists have never been in it for the money, because there's none.
Yeah.
Do you want to get sponsors on this TERFCAST?
I don't know if that is going to happen. Maybe we'll get sponsored by, like, Wolf Fest or something.
Right.
Yeah. Well, there you have it, folks. Women's spaces, very valuable things. Very, to be honest, like, I don't want to come off like this is, like, any kind of, intellectual fetish of mine, but, like, I really have always loved, just, like, obscure and marginalized things in general, like art, people, ideologies, and radical feminism to me is, like, an extremely, like, marginalized ideology, like, and just it's really fascinating to just see, like, in our liberal feminist zeitgeist how real feminist ideas are still so suppressed. I don't want to talk too bad about lib femmes because I'm male. I can't say lib fem are bad at all, because they're women too. That's a subject for
another day, for another TERFCAST.
Yeah, for women to decide, really. But yeah, it's just like I love, just like to hear all this stuff, and just women have all these different ideas because they have a completely separate experience from men, and that's something that I realized at a certain point, that I was not gonna be a woman because I didn't have these same experiences. It was totally different, and I respected those things, and so how impressive I am. But anyway, and then we have, again, to really to tie it up here, we have people like Yaniv who think that women's spaces are perhaps even literally not just for their validation, but they completely fetishize them, even sexually. So
right, yeah, totally. And I think that it's a fight worth fighting. I am also kind of generally not interested in fighting things. I'm if you present a really good fight for me, I'll fight, but there's a lot of things that I'm that's bad, that sucks, I don't know, I can't really dedicate any portion of my time to it. But this, I don't know, this strikes me as something worth defending. And it kind of did right away. As soon as it kind of came onto my doorstep, I was like, this is a precious, beautiful gift, and I'm gonna fight for this. So
I believe so too. I'm the same.
So everybody who is listening this far into the podcast, if you have any comments or critiques, if you really hate me saying the word TERF,
if you really hate me being a TERF, I will. I'll listen so well.
Yeah.
Penis never make my pussy wet.
TERF gang.
TERF gang, TERF gang, TERF gang, TERF gang, TERF gang, TERF gang, TERF gang. Spend 10 on a rat girl raid. That boy love do S-trace. I fuck a bitch, I'm a lesbian. Couldn't buy my bitch no wedding ring. Till 15, still got pledge. TERF gang, TERF gang, TERF gang. TERF gang, TERF gang, TERF gang, TERF gang, TERF gang, TERF gang, TERF gang. Spend 10 on a rat girl raid. That boy love do S-trace. I fuck a bitch, I'm a lesbian. Couldn't buy my bitch no wedding ring. Till 15, still gap wage. TERF gang, TERF gang, TERF gang.